Hi, this is my presentation on tort liability. My name is Aaron Hafner, and I'm going to discuss five different court cases on tort liability as we go through this presentation. First off, to define tort liability, it's a legal obligation of one party to a victim as a result of civil wrong or injury. There's two types of tort liability. One is intentional torts, which is basically things that people do intentionally, such thing as assault and battery, false imprisonment, and defamation. The negligence torts, I think, are a little bit more, I think, more common, and then they happen more regularly when it comes to liability issues. First one is duty, the duty to protect our students, protect ourselves, different things like that. The breach of our duty, maybe supervision, different things that fall under that category, and proximate cause. And then if there is an injury in a situation where maybe you were supposed to be supervising, different things like that, those all fall under that negligence tort. As we start into our cases, I have 5 cases. I pick my cases as they hopefully relate to what I want to do in administration. I would like to be an athletic director, so I try to come up with cases that I thought would be relevant to help me become a better athletic director and handle certain situations the right way. So I read lots of different cases and tried to come up with things that were involved with sports or maybe assaults or different things that I have come across over the years. My first case is Fram versus Como. Summary of the incident was Fram was a student in the class, was causing a disruption. Como was the teacher and decided to forcefully move the student. The student tripped and fell down. The parents decided to basically sue Como for an assault. As the reactive measures, as we go through this, I think as an administrator, we need to make sure we discuss the incident with the teacher, student involved, and with witnessing students, maybe 2 or 3 students. And you have to do that individually just because you want to make sure they don't feed off each other in the same room, different things like that. Interview those witnesses individually to get the story, how the student was being disruptive, how the teacher handled the situation, all those types of different things. Obviously, when you do this, you want to document all those discussions to see how things line up, see where there's loopholes or maybe some falsifications in those reports. And obviously, you want to contact the student's parents to discuss this after you interview the people that we mentioned. The proactive measures would be to create a professional development day that discusses common tort liability cases and how to respond to these cases. I think one thing that I have done at a couple different school districts that have been beneficial to me is divide up in group in a professional development day. There's a scenario given to each group, and you try to come up with a solution to the scenario, and then you discuss that amongst everybody involved with a professional development group. It's a great way to learn and interact with your peers and come up with proper solutions. Also, describe an appropriate classroom environment. What kind of environment are we trying to create in our classroom? And as an administrator, it's our obligation to discuss that with our teachers. A lot of it's common sense, but it never hurts to go over those things. And give examples of providing, having good classroom management and what the expectations are for teachers in the classroom and how we're going to handle these situations. Professional ethics, I think ethical treatment of students in challenging situations is always tough. How to keep level-headed, how to not let students get under your skin to a point where you react in a way you don't want to react, because it can get you into trouble. And it's important to be able to handle things with having a level head and being super cautious of how we handle those. In case number 2, 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to discuss different cases that were in some type of athletic, either on the playing field in like locker room type stuff, hazing and bullying. A lot of these type stuff come up, and I think it's important that we did that I, as a future athletic director, know how to handle these situations. And it was very interesting to me to read a lot of different cases. And I chose 4 within in the athletic department type environment to come up with solutions to different cases. The first one, in case number 2, Doe versus Hamilton County Board of Education. There was a hazing incident where there were 2 freshmen boys that made a varsity basketball team. They go on a road trip to a tournament, and the seniors on the basketball team did some hazing and some bullying. It was a very vicious act. The seniors sodomized the freshmen with pool sticks. One of the victims' bladder erupted, and they had some different issues with him. He had to have emergency surgery. Obviously, a terrible situation. The reactive measures to this is to discuss the situation, get all the details from the coaches, obviously the victims and the leaders on the team, and then you have to contact the parents. I think the parents in this situation actually contacted the administration first. But it's important that once you get wind of it, that you contact the parents, make sure they're aware of what happened, if their son had discussed it, and that's the victim side and the parents of the young men who did this vicious act, and then there has to be immediate action against coaches and players that were involved with this, and because it's such a high level case, and the bullying, the hazing. Lots of really vicious things going on here. So there has to be some type of immediate action, temporary suspension to all details, different things like that are going to be important in this case. Being proactive, I think, develop expectations for coaches, and make sure there's a handbook that's discussed. I'm a football coach. I'm a track coach. Our athletic director. We spend a professional development day for all our coaches to sit down and discuss our handbook, and these things are in there, and how we should handle not just overnight trips, but all types of situations. And make sure that we educate our students on bullying and hazing. Obviously, that's a problem with social media these days, but make sure we're continually that we're educating them on how to basically create a culture of caring about each other and different things like that. I think that's important. And the supervision of our student athletes, especially on an overnight trip, is very critical to be proactive, set those expectations before you would go stay the night in hotels and different things where kids are going to have opportunities to perform acts when you can't be watching them all the time. Professional ethics, I think establishing a handbook in your athletic department for coaches and student athletes is extremely important. Set the expectations. Try to hold them as accountable as you can to those expectations. Incidents are going to pop up, and then make sure you have something that discusses what the consequences are going to be for those. In case number 3, Kelly versus McCarrick, this was an interesting case. To brief the case, there was a softball player that slid into second base and broke a girl's ankle with a slide. And essentially what happened is the parents were very disappointed with how this was handled. They thought it was a vicious slide. The girl that broke her leg ended up suing the other school district and the coaches from the other school district. Very interesting case. And if you look at this, reactive measures, again, discuss the situation. I think you could get input from the umpires. Everybody has their cell phones out these days. Did anybody have video footage of the incident? Was it done on purpose, or was it just part of the game? And then you have to contact the opposing school of the allegations to make sure they understand that these allegations are being brought against them. Proactive would be make sure that we're teaching sportsmanship and how to play the game the correct way. And, coaches need to teach proper techniques in sports. Sportsmanship and treating your opponent with respect is obviously the professional ethics part of this. In this particular case, the case was dropped just because they found that the girl basically was just sliding in. It was an accident and an overreaction by the parents in this particular case. We go to case 4 in Druzy versus the town of East Haven. This was an after-school cross-country practice, and a young man tripped over a bench that was somebody had put a bench in lane 1 of the track, and the student in Druzy has tripped over it and broke his leg, and they sued the coaches for not providing a safe environment. And the reactive measures to this, if this situation happened, was talk to the members of the cross-country team. There was 25 student athletes out on the track. 24 of them avoided the bench, and one of them ran into the bench. So there need to be some more details of how this all happened. Again, talk to the parents. And then how did this, was the young man goofing around? Why didn't they stop and move the bench? Some different things that obviously a coach could move the bench if he saw it. That's the liability part in creating a safe environment, but the student athletes could have done the same thing as well. Proactive measures, make sure you're talking to your coaches about creating a safe environment at all times in practice, and make sure that you have appropriate supervision, expectations for your coaches. The professional ethics part of this is always create a safe environment for all involved. In case number 5, Barrett versus USD number 259. This was a case from a long time ago, and I'd heard of this case, and when I started doing research on it, I thought I wanted to talk about it a little bit further. But a football player had died in practice on a very hot day. They were doing 2-a-days. It's kind of a back-to-back 2-a-days with an hour break in between. And the student athlete died of heat exhaustion. The reactive measures is discuss the situation with coaches, lawyers, superintendent, athletic trainer. I think this is obviously a devastating occurrence that happened, that you need to get a lot of people involved. You have to document lots of things, because there's obviously going to be probably a lawsuit on hand. And support the family of the victims, players and coaches with this devastating loss. I think that's important, and we don't just forget about. There are other reactions that happen in this. We need to make sure we support them. Proactive is, and this case happened in 1998, and I think it was finally settled in 2001. The coaches really did a good job with handling this situation, and they were found not negligent in this case. And I think it has led to a lot of rules in Kansas now, that education on heat-related injuries, no more 2-a-days in Kansas, heat restrictions for practice, and almost every school now has athletic trainers for practice. So there's lots of things there that I think we're being educated, unfortunately, through some bad things that have happened in the past, and sports now are becoming more safe when it comes to heat-related injuries. Professional ethics is make sure we take all injuries serious. Listen to the players. If they have issues, you need to make sure that you react the correct way, and understand that they could be injured, and don't just think they're trying to get out of things and things like that. We need to make sure we take all injuries seriously. This is my 5 cases on tort liability. Thanks for listening.